Thank you for joining us for another program in our series, Centrally Speaking.
Centrally Speaking is a program that opens up the conversation around important matters of economics and finance, matters of national importance that have an impact on your life. So, Sheena?
Yes, Anna?
You know what today is?
Today is Thursday?
Ben Johnson Day.
Okay.
You know, so when I was growing up, right, Thursday is the day where we get, a little something for cook.
Okay.
You know the little something we cook? Like little rice and little corned beef.
Okay.
A piece of pear. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Boy, we love the period.
So big up to all the Jamaicans on Ben Johnson Day, who are cook up a little something, just eat dinner and are now sitting down to watch Centrally Speaking. So Sheena, another week of Centrally Speaking.
Yes, indeed.
Talking about monetary policy and inflation targeting.
Right. This program helps us to break down topics like inflation, price stability, foreign exchange, and so on in a way that any and everyone can understand.
Yes, and this is really important because we all need to know how these things relate to our everyday life.
So that's why we're going to have experts from Bank of Jamaica who will help us to do just that.
Right, so where we start?
In one of our previous programs, we began a conversation with one of Bank of Jamaica's lead economists who shed light on inflation and the inflation target. He's back with us, and we'll hear from him right after we check in with the streets.
Yes, I want to hear this one.
What are your thoughts on the movement of the prices of goods and services?
The prices are going up too fast. I remember I went to a store and I purchased a bag, and by the next week, the price gone up sky high, and they're telling me that the US dollars is rising. And that is unfair.
First time one bag juice, I would say $20, now at $30.
They might raise everything to half thing. You see me, I can't raise this week and I raise it all next week again. You see me, and thing I mash up people like Queen and Sheik. You can't raise up the price for the people them, because them in the idea can run them, you see me. And people go stop by from you.
When you go to shop or you go to the wholesale and you carry a money to buy something, it is a different price from the day before.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you go to buy this, you pay $600 for the pack, and when you go back you pay $720.
Like this now, I buy this $5.50. Right now it's gone to $6.50. You understand? Everything gone up. Everything where you lose and make money for your profit cut.
Chicken gone up again, you know. You notice that, though? Chicken gone up again, man. Everything will go up. You see me? And guess what? P&R raise. So we need to hear where the Prime Minister dealing right now, Mr. Holness.
It is very hard to find the money to really buy food nowadays. You have to strategize how you are going to buy things, and some people want clothes and shoes and can't even buy that either.
For example, steel. Steel was like 60,000, 70, and now it's gone up to 180,000. Me I build my house, and now I feel homeless and hopeless.
If I see things go up, I have to go up with mine. Because me can't stay there, so and everything I raise up and my things stay there, so I'm not going to make nothing. See it? Because when the farmer say, yo, if pineapple like say $70 a pound, and when me go buy it, see it wholesale, I not get it for that. See it? I give me for the $70 wholesale. Wholesale I give me for $70. So I have to come out and say right then, 120 then a pound. You understand? To make something back on it. 120 or 150. To try and make something. And all the way that. So if me not do that, I not go say nothing.
Sheena, say we need to invite some of these people that we interview in the Vox Pop. We need to have them on the show,
I think that's a good idea.
Say if they were to interview our guests, say wouldn't have, man. All right, so they would have a lot to say, and I'm sure they would even want to interview our guest this evening, Bank of Jamaica's lead economist, Robert Stennett, who will break down inflation after the break. Welcome back to Centrally Speaking. It's time to meet Deputy Governor of Research and Economic Programming and Financial Stability at Bank of Jamaica, Robert Stennett.
Robert Stennett, welcome to Welcome back to Centrally Speaking.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you. Great to know that you've been keeping safe.
We try.
Yes.
All right, so Robert, the last time we were here, we were talking about monetary policy, right? For those of our new viewers, welcome, new viewers. For the new viewers, what is monetary policy? And would I be correct to say is money policy?
Well,
simply put.
Let's keep it at monetary policy. I want to be as simple as possible.
Right.
Monetary policy really relates to anything and everything that the central bank does to control inflation.
Okay. All right, so my niece, Essie, is 7 years old.
Yes.
So if I were to explain inflation to her, how would I do so?
Well, inflation in its simplest form exists when the price of a set of goods and services that are consumed by the typical person in the society goes up. So that is how the central bank defines inflation. I think it's easy to imagine in explaining it to your niece, of a basket consisting of some goods like rice, flour, chicken, and some services, which includes electricity, rent, transportation fees. Over a period, the price of these commodities are going to be changing. So what inflation reflects is the change in that average price in today relative to what that price was some time ago. Now, the trick about inflation is that in that basket, some prices are going to be going up and some prices are going to be going down. So you will not necessarily see a large change in this measure that is called inflation because it reflects the average of these prices. So in short, inflation really relates to the average change in a fixed amount of goods and services that the typical consumer purchases per time period.
Okay, and the basket is the consumer price index basket?
Well, that's what the statin actually measures.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so is the government's monetary policy actually working?
Why don't we step back a bit and talk about exactly what this monetary policy is?
Right.
As I said at the beginning, it really relates to everything that the central bank does. And I can classify what the central bank does in two broad areas.
Right.
One is the instruments that the central bank uses to control inflation.
Our tools.
Our tools, nice. And there's a second component which people don't normally recognize, and it's the communication of what it does that is also very useful.
Right.
So I'm gonna spend a little time explaining the first one and the second one.
Right.
The tools of monetary policy, where BOJ is concerned, can be classified as three. One is controlling interest rates.
Right.
The second one is controlling what we call reserve requirements.
Right.
And the third one is really using open market operations to control the volume of liquidity in the society.
So liquidity, by that you mean how much cash
Banks have
Banks
in their
have
accounts at BOJ.
to lend to businesses and individuals.
Which they can lend.
Which they can lend. So that is what liquidity is.
Essentially.
Right, okay.
Right.
So the fact that we can get a car loan at average 6%, the fact that we can get a mortgage at average 12%, the fact that we can, businesses can borrow from banks at an average of what? 12%.
12%.
Yes. So, and it used to be much higher. Car loans used to be 22, mortgages about 22. So the fact that these interest rates have come down significantly is a demonstration on that monetary policy is working?
Has worked.
Or has worked?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So if we were to talk to farmers, school teachers, nurses at this time, you know, the corner shop people, and they were to say to us, no man, but monetary policy now work for me too tough because my price might increase. Yes, this interest rate, but when I borrow the money, I spend, but everything I go up. What would you say to those persons?
I would say true. Inflation is not a situation where prices don't move.
Right.
Inflation exists when prices actually move. And as I said earlier, in a basket, you may actually have some prices moving faster than other prices, and in fact, you may have some prices falling. So what people tend to do is look at those prices that are going up.
Yeah.
So for example, when yam is being sold at $250 and $300 a pound, people are going to say, but this is hurting me. But at the same time, they don't recognize that their phone bill has gone down because the phone company has cut the cost of making cause.
Would I like the electricity to go down too?
Yes.
Yeah, that one never wants to go down.
All right. So, Mr. Stennett, why does the bank focus on inflation targeting and not on the exchange rate?
Sheena, that's an excellent question. Inflation represents the increase or increases in the cost of living of the average consumer.
Right.
The exchange rate represents increases, or it signals increases in the cost of living for just a narrow set of commodities.
Okay.
It's just one price, and it affects only those prices that are imported. So in our view, it's important to focus our attention on all prices,
Okay.
which is better captured by the inflation rate rather than the exchange rate, which captures just one price in its first instance, and then only those prices that are imported are going to be affected by the exchange rate ultimately. So it's a more narrow measure than the one that we focus on.
There are some persons, though, who disagree with us. They would say that, no man, Mr. Stennett, but me shop online. And when we go on Amazon last week, the rate of 150, this week at 155. Thing them a go up. No, Mr. Stennett. When my people them send money for me, you know, a little money when me I get it a go down. No, Mr. Stennett, you talk about, but this is what I am experiencing. What would you say to, by the way, that is my kind of person.
I would say that the experience of every individual
Yes.
is going to be different. There's no two individuals in a society that consume the same pattern of goods.
Right.
The central bank is concerned about everybody, but it has to watch one metric.
Right.
And that metric has to be what is representative of the average person. So you're going to have some people who are hurt more by the exchange rate than others, but when you take it across the average person, then the inflation rate is by far the most important metric to manage.
So the reserves are those, the foreign exchange that you have?
What is called the net international reserves.
Right.
Yes.
So this is the income from tourism, bauxite. That is what makes up the reserve?
Yes, the
Right.
savings of the country in US dollars.
Okay,
That
okay.
is essentially what is held by the central bank.
So on that note, Robert, if monetary policy focuses on inflation, will that help to stabilize the Jamaican dollar against its U.S. counterpart?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Okay.
How does this work? Well, if we are successful in stabilizing inflation, the difference between our inflation rate and those in say the United States is going to be what drives the exchange rate. So let me just explain what is going on here. As a simple example,
Right.
if the price of, say, patties in Jamaica is going up at a faster rate than the price of patty in the US, you know, just imagine, for example, that somebody in the US is making patties.
Right.
That difference between the price of patty in Jamaica and the price of patty in the US is going to cause Jamaicans to stop buying local patty and try to go for the US patty. And so the demand for foreign exchange to buy US patty is going to rise, while the supply of foreign exchange that we would get from our patties being sold in the US is going to fall. You're going to have an imbalance between foreign exchange inflows and foreign exchange demand, and therefore the exchange rate will depreciate. So what you want to do is...
But depreciate meaning it will just get higher.
The exchange rate will move from 140 to 150,
Right.
Because the exchange rate, the US dollar is getting scarce.
Right.
So what do you want to do? As long as the central bank is successful in controlling inflation, and the difference between inflation in Jamaica and that in the US remains small, then it actually helps to control or to stabilize the exchange rate.
Okay.
Using your explanation just now of the difference between the inflation rate in the US and the inflation rate in Jamaica, right? So there's a long-term policy ambition to have the two inflation rates to be similar, between 2 and 3%. Is this achievable? Is it achievable? I think that's the question.
And I think we need to step back and recognize that we are in a new world. Firstly, the responsibility for setting the target, the inflation target for the Bank of Jamaica is now that of the government.
Yes.
It's now in the purview of policy making of the government. That is not to say that the central bank does not advise, but ultimately the responsibility is that of the Minister of Finance to give the target to the central bank. So it's not for us to say that we aim to get inflation to 2 to 3%. This is going to be dependent on what the government of Jamaica says to the central bank. The other point I want to make is that it is not yet clear, even among developed countries, that 2 to 3% inflation is the best for the country. Even now, there's a debate in the US as to whether 2 to 3% or 2% for that matter is appropriate.
Right.
And just recently, the monetary authorities in the US actually changed the measure that they target from just inflation to average inflation, which is saying that if inflation falls below 2% for a sustained period, then they will aim to target inflation above 2% over another period, such that the average inflation rate over this entire period is coming to 2.
Okay.
I think that's similar to what is called price level targeting, where you try to keep the price level at a particular level, and if it falls below that, then you boost things. So it's not inconceivable for the U.S. federal authorities to start targeting 3% inflation if inflation in the U.S. goes too low for too long.
With that said, give us a scorecard of Jamaica's performance from January to August 2021.
Scorecard. Sheena, I'm gonna treat it a little differently.
Okay.
Let me give you the first number. The first number is that we have the inflation rate for August 2021, and unfortunately, it was a little bit higher than our target. So it came out at 6.1%.
Yes.
So this is a little higher than the inflation rate that we had at July, which was 5.4, and even higher yet than the inflation rate that we had at August 2020, which was 5.1. And I would dare to say that going forward, we're going to be entering into a little choppy waters. But that is not to say that the central bank has not done well. An internal measure that we use to measure success is to look at how inflation has behaved over the past 36 months.
Okay.
Right? So I want to give you that statistic.
Yes, we welcome that.
So over the past 36 months, inflation has actually fallen between the central bank's target range of 4% to 6%. 24 times.
Okay.
And that's a success rate of 67%.
Right.
Okay.
I think in high school jargon, that would be a B+.
Right.
Which is good.
Which is good.
You know?
Yeah,
but the better news is that the reason it has not been an A is because inflation has actually fallen below the target range on a number of occasions.
Okay.
We mean
Below the 4%.
4%.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Another metric that we can use is to look at how inflation has behaved relative to the upper limit of the target. Nobody really cares when inflation falls below 4%, but if inflation goes above 6%, people are going to matter.
Right.
So if you just consider the 6% and ask yourself, how often has inflation breached it? I'm happy to report that over that 36 months, inflation has been below 6%, 33% of the time, which in percent terms is a pass rate of 92%. I would say that we've done spectacularly well.
Okay.
Yes.
And this is since 2019?
Over the past 3 years, since August 2020. So you go all the way back. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Robert, as always, very insightful. We want to thank you for joining us to share about the work of Bank of Jamaica, and in particular, inflation targeting.
Thank you for having me.
So at this point in time, I'm going to give you the honor of telling our viewers how they can learn a little bit more about the work of Bank of Jamaica.
Sure. Well, viewers, you can follow us on Twitter at Central Bank JA or on BOJ's Facebook page and our YouTube channel. And of course, you can always visit our newly refurbished website at boj.org.jm.
Thank you so much, Robert Stennett. That's Robert Stennett. He's Bank of Jamaica's newest Deputy Governor for Research and Economic Programming and Financial Stability, and also BOJ's lead economist. From Robert and inflation targeting, let's go to the fun fact.
How money transfers started. From the moment money came into existence, people have been searching for ways to speed up transferring money to others. So how did we get to the point of transferring money electronically? Well, it all began with the invention of the telegraph in the 1800s. Developed in the 1830s and 1840s, The telegraph revolutionized long-distance communication. In 1851, the New York and Mississippi Valley Printing Telegraph Company was founded. By the end of 1861, Western Union had built the first transcontinental telegraph line. The company was later renamed the Western Union Telegraph Company. And in 1872, Western Union became the first company to send money via telegram. Someone wanting to send money would pay the money and a fee at a Western Union telegraph office. The operator would transmit a message authorizing another office to release the funds to a recipient at that location. That's how money transfers started.
Whether you're a smart farmer, street vendor, big investor, every entrepreneur, you got to wise up about your money. You have to make sure say your money secure. When you need to grow, you have access to more.
Financial inclusion means that individuals and businesses have access to useful and affordable financial products and services that meet their needs.
Access to more money, more credit, whatever your business needs. When you work hard for your money must work for you.
So just in case you didn't get all the major points from our interview with Robert Stennett, here are the fast facts. Number 1. Monetary policy essentially involves the changing of interest rates in the economy to influence the inflation rate. Number 2. Inflation is the outcome of too much money chasing too few goods. Number 3. BOJ's main mandate is to keep inflation low, stable, and predictable. Number 4. Controlling inflation, which is the same as controlling how fast the average Jamaican's cost of living is rising, is more important than controlling the exchange rate. And number 5. BOJ has been very successful in keeping inflation below 6% over the past 3 years up to August 2021. Over the period, inflation has fallen below 6% a whopping 92% of the time. And that's it for our Fast Facts.
That's a wrap for today's show. We invite you to send in your questions on Twitter or on Facebook. Anything you want to know, we can answer.
And of course, watch Centrally Speaking again next week at the same time right here on your station when we will have another special guest. I'm Sheena.
And I'm Anna. Thanks for watching.
Centrally Speaking is a production of Bank of Jamaica.